responsibility at this point. So that's what I have to report, and hopefully he can come into this body and give you folks a report, and we'll try to get that done. Okay. So maybe we could entertain a possibly a recommendation to do that either now or at the end of the near the end of your meeting. So that's my report. We'll see if we can get that done before the end of the year, obviously. I don't expect pushback from the council, but there could be pushback in terms of when someone's term expires. One of the things that we're doing in all committees and commissions at this point is putting the recommendation out to the community, so everyone has a chance to apply for it. So that could be a possibility when we report this to the council. Okay. We have another opening? Exactly. So it will probably be heard, and, you know, congratulations at this point.
Anybody out there on the TV that's listening, we have an open vacancy on the Parks Commission. Feel free to watch this and see how neat it is to be on the Parks Commission, and we'd love to have you.
And oh, bye. Don't have to be a member of our city to be on the Parks Commission.
Sherry, the Miller Road property park design?
Yeah, I think Sue and I'll both kind of talk about this. So does everyone have a copy of option 1 and 2 in front of them? If they don't, I think John can pass you those park designs. Yeah, because that's I'd like to go over that. It's
I need one. Thank you much.
Okay, so just for context, we've talked about this property in terms of its zoning, and the Parks and Trails Commission made a recommendation. I don't know how long ago that was, but less than a year ago, to move forward with a trail through the property, and then having the top half approximately remain park, and then the bottom be mixed use. That was your recommendation to council. What is triggering this now is that we have an easement that is set to expire unless we get some improvement on the site to formalize this easement. So that is off of Chase Road, which you can see on both options on the west side of the property there. So we're trying to legalize that easement and make sure we don't lose the ability to use that as our access. So the two options. So the first option is obviously much larger than the second option. Both utilize Chase Road. But the biggest thing to note of the site is it's challenging because of the wetlands on the property. So number 12 identifies the 3 different wetland boundaries. So they're kind of that dotted lighter line. So there's one kind of in the middle, there's one at the end by the creek, and then there's one closer to Millard Road. And so we're trying to work around those wetlands, and option 1, I think, well, both options do a good job at incorporating some trails and maybe a boardwalk through especially that larger one in the middle. We feel like option 1 is able to utilize that wetland as a benefit to the park, whereas option 2, you're going to be kind of developing around the wetland and trying to stay away from the boundary because you can't develop a wetland. So some of the elements of option 1, which is the larger park, you'll notice right away there's 2 ball fields. One of the ball fields is larger and can accommodate baseball, and that's also the one where we're proposing a turf outfield. So number 7 there is showing an outfield or a turf field in the outfield there.
And also the option to use that as a multi-use field, not just a baseball field. So it would have multiple uses.
So soccer, football.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The whole outfield would be turf with an inlay of that multi-purpose field that would be
Right.
be able to be utilized for other sporting events.
Right.
So very
Yes.
versatile.
They scaled it. I don't have those dimensions offhand.
Yes, you'd be able to use it football or soccer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
It would just
was-
be a challenge of scheduling, but that's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we incorporated 2 fields because we thought maybe tournaments are more easily to schedule if you've got 2 fields that can go at the same time. They are different sizes. We worked hard to try to fit 2 larger ones on the site, but it was just really difficult to do. Some other elements. So on option 1, you'll notice there's a playground by both fields. So if you've got one kid who's playing games, you can have another place for your little ones to play while they're playing games. And then there's a dog off-leash area in both designs, kind of in the same spot, closer to the creek, but far enough away that, the topography is relatively flat there. And a lot of the site doesn't have trees. So a lot of this would be planted and take time to establish. But there is kind of this natural overlook area, and that's by number 4. So that's a covered picnic shelter. There's kind of this overlook, and if you place a covered picnic shelter there, you can kind of see down into the creek area. And so both options have that feature. And then on both options too, we're utilizing the easement. So on the option 1, the parking lot is close to the access so that there's less of the property developed with road. We're trying to be efficient with space. There's also a sport court and then kind of a concession stand and restroom right near that parking lot. So it's easy to maintain for parks crew. It's just right there off of the access.
Yeah, we worked with Thad a lot to try to put the concession stand, the restrooms, the access things, not only in between the 2 parks, but also in a very easily accessible location.
Yeah, it's kind of centralized.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the smaller park design kind of has about half the parking, but we could easily expand that parking lot if it needed to be on either design. I think there's kind of enough wiggle room. But I think those are the major elements. I don't know if there are any comments or questions you have on those designs. What I'm hoping for from you is maybe a discussion about which one makes sense, and maybe a motion to City Council. These have not been presented to City Council yet, and I would like to present them with a motion from you guys, whether you like them both, or you like one or the other, or you like certain elements of one. Just any thoughts you might have about these. Yeah, so as far as funding goes, usually, you don't get a large sum all at once for the whole park. So yeah, we would probably phase this in.
That
So just south of Chase Road, that's a church.
It's a church. there,
Yeah.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
but there is a home north of that.
Yeah, there is a home directly west of the parking lot there. But I know it's hard to feel the space, but it's actually a lot of space in between there. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of feet between the parking lot and that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we didn't get that detailed with it, but I think you can kind of see on option one, the bigger baseball field has kind of that concrete area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would assume with a field this big, and if we're doing a turf outfield, we'd want
We would want bleachers.
the best, yeah, the best facilities for seating. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback because that's what we heard from Thad, the
Right.
park supervisor, as well. And that's kind of why we wanted to have a park design that incorporated these sport facilities. There are not a lot of other options, is what we were hearing.
Right. And also, there's not a lot of parks at all on the west side of the highway, you know, just like Lynn was saying. And there's a lot of development starting to happen on that side of the highway, and that's where all of the developable land is. So having park amenities over there, I think are important, but hopefully, you know, Parks Commission would also feel that that's an important. Yes. To the community. Mhm.
Also,
Can I make one,
Yes.
Jared, can I make one comment? Just real quickly. The reason you're looking at two different options is because the council requested two different options. So the city did receive an offer to purchase a portion or all of this land for a multi-million-dollar offer. So that's why the council is asking for two proposals of, do you sell it all or some of it and have a small park and take some of that money to put elsewhere for some of the bigger projects and park projects and other projects we have down the road? Or do we invest it all and make a park the entire size? So that's why you're seeing two different sizes. I don't think there's any argument that everybody would love option one. I think the question is more, is it acceptable to look at both options, considering the city will likely have an offer officially for developing that lower portion? Well,
Well, the council,
the southern portion.
the council has heard numerous offers to purchase that property and develop it. Numerous. And so this is like an action plan for the parks people to get on board to make certain that you folks are heard. And that's what this is about. So it's your voice is going to be very important to be heard on a council if you want some of that property to be a park or the whole thing to be a park or whatever. So let's be, I just want to be real clear about that, what we're doing here.
Two comments I have. One is, I don't think we should be short-sighted because the city's gonna grow. It's probably gonna really grow in the next 20 or 30 years. So somewhere down the line, we'll say, wouldn't it really be nice if we had a park over there? You know, I think that, and the other part, the other part of this, that park is, I just think there's a lot more use for this. And
We did make a recommendation on this property.
Regarding zoning, yeah.
Regarding zoning that, well, more than regarding zoning, it was this portion being, I guess, promoted as being a senior nursing home, assisted living facility. As we passed that on to the council. Now, I'm not sure if the council agreed to that or just ignored it.
Well, it's pretty hard to mandate a business to go in. It's like, how long are you going to wait? 20, 30 years for someone to come along and do that business? So it's kind of that's kind of pinholes the use of the property until someone comes along to do that. That isn't the case if it's a park. And so that's kind of the discussions have been numerous about this property. And one of the things that we're hearing from the people who paid for this property out of the idea that it was going to be a hospital there is that the council made a common decision is that whatever we do on that property should be for the public benefit. And is a residential development a public benefit? Well, it could be. But is a park more a public benefit? I certainly think so. That's my subjective opinion. And so that's why we're here.
It's a different, fairly close. And I'm glad you brought that up, Lynn, because I was going to mention that this is not the only option for park development and park property on the west side of or in the southwest area of the urban growth boundary. There is the property that is off of Ross Road that is designated as park property. It's undeveloped, but that's where they do the golf practice.
And the other thing too, this is relatively close to the high school.
It is, yes. Bridge to Maple Road. Yeah. Narrow.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, Pat, we're gonna go right now, we're gonna go topics from the floor. Are there topics from the floor?
That's what I knew.
That was your cue.
Yeah, your cue.
Hi, Patrick Berkeley, and thanks for accommodating me. I was substituting a kindergarten at Warren, and great day in kindergarten today. Really, it was. Anyway, so thank you. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. I know I'll be supporting Lynn with her proposal about the Dalton Lake Nature Preserve, but just a couple of things I want to throw out at you guys just for consideration. I'm not expecting any response or anything like that. But one is has to do with invasive and obnoxious weed control in the parks and in the just I guess the city in general. I know I've sponsored a few solve cleanups. Howard and Caroline and Nob Hill have been doing that, but I'm not aware that there's like any kind of overall vision or an approach towards control of invasive species. And I'm thinking Scotch broom, English ivy, Himalayan raspberry, English ivy as being some of the most obvious and notorious things. So I guess I'd just like to maybe ask you to put on your plate in the future, as particularly as concerns the parks, is having some kind of plan for removal and control and restoration of invasive species, not just in the natural area, say the natural area like Nob Hill or Dalton Lake, but say at McCormick and Campbell and the botanical gardens, that sort of thing. Then on a related note, I would also like to say that a couple of weeks ago, I was at McCormick Park, and it might be about 10 years ago or more, under a previous Kevin McCarthy, who was working at, he once wanted to try to get friends groups going, and I responded at McCormick Park, and we never got a formal group going, but I did at the time submitted a volunteer form to remove like English ivy at McCormick Park, and again, that's some time ago, but I guess I had always been under the impression that that was an ongoing thing, that I, as a volunteer, that when I'm out and about, would be able to help remove invasive species. And I've been doing that off and on over the years, and usually when I cut or pull something, I set it aside for collection or whatever. But a couple of weeks ago, I was walking through the park when I was encountered by a gentleman who was on the disc golf course, who was questioning my authority to do some removal of Scotch broom. Scotch broom there, and I have been clipping it and all. And I guess, again, under the impression that I had kind of an ongoing ability to do that. Now, first of all, if I don't have that, if I need to re-up my volunteer stuff, I am perfectly willing to follow the steps. The thing that concerned me, though, is that the gentleman was very confrontational in terms of demanding identification and proof that I had permission to do what I was doing. I chose not to do that, and because of that, the gentleman thought that I was a scallywag, not doing. He demanded that I tell him who I was, which I refused to do, as he would not tell himself. He identified himself as somebody who had also volunteered with the Parks Department, although not his name. He was going to take my picture. I would not allow him to do that, and he took that as a sign of something. And then the third thing is, as I was walking away, a couple of times he shouted out, "I better not catch you here doing this again." So what I would like to do is, first of all, again, if I need to re-up my volunteer application stuff, I will be happy to do that. I think, as you know, when I come to talk to the city council and stuff, I try to follow the rules, and I certainly want to do the same. But if this gentleman had identified himself as a city employee, or I would have certainly done my best to cooperate, but I wasn't about to tell a person, yeah, I've got this, that I have this, it was on file in the city, I did this 20 years ago, I don't have. But maybe perhaps the city could consider, in these cases, providing volunteers with some kind of ID, a picture ID or something, so that if it's an ongoing thing, I understand, like when we do the solve cleanup, do Nob Hill, we're an organized group, we inform the city we're doing it such and such a time. But when we're dealing with wanting to remove these obnoxious weeds and things, and maybe just want to do it on our own time and stuff, that if somebody does question us, and I think as a citizen, if I saw somebody who's clipping stuff down, I'd want to know that they're on the up and up. But perhaps the city does consider some type of procedure where they could provide a identification bag, a tag or something like that, and the like, because frankly, in 10 years, I have never been afraid of at the park. I do have a fear that should I go back and this gentleman catches me back there again pulling a weed or something, I felt personally threatened. And again, if I was in the wrong, I'll do what I need to do to get back, but I do hope that maybe the city, you would think about enabling volunteers to have some kinds of identification. So if somebody does challenge them, they could at least show them, hey, I've got this, but no way would I identify myself, allow my picture to be taken, or by somebody who had no idea who he was. So. Sorry? No, he did not give his name. He just identified himself as somebody who had done volunteer work with Thad Hauk, and yeah.
So Patrick, I'm sorry that you had to endure that when you're trying to serve the community. Three comments here. One, you signed, I think we did say it had to be a yearly waiver.
Okay.
Permission, so that needs to be signed every year.
Okay.
But it was.
Well, that was for I thought I understood that as a specific thing, but if I need to do, I will certainly do that.
And two, you need to get Thad's permission before you go do that, so he needs to know that you're doing it. And as far as ID, we'll kind of throw that open to.
Yeah.
You know, this could be very simple because Thad could just simply have some volunteer name tags in the Parks Bureau. So when you go check in with Thad, you could get your volunteer tag on. Your name doesn't have to be on it, just that you're a volunteer,
Yeah.
I would think. And
So-
I could see that happening very simple and short and sweet.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, so thank you for clarifying that. I guess when I did fill that out, I wasn't, and I hadn't checked, it was just something I had been in the habit of doing over the last, few years and this and that, but I will certainly do that.
But do we want to have a motion, kind of what, Commissioner Morgan said? Do we want to?
Well, yeah, it might be something that we need to discuss at the staff level before we implement something, because I can see that there could be a lot of, potential issues. Somebody takes a volunteer and never turns it back in, and so now we've got 100 people out there with volunteer tags that don't have any current the liability slips and things like that. So it's definitely something that we could discuss staff wise. And yeah, that's sorry you had to go through
Okay,
that.
and again, obviously part of it was, I think maybe even if I had done it, signed it, the yearly thing, again, the way this gentleman approached me, it would not have satisfied him. But again, I will make sure that every time I do that, I will make sure I've got the annual thing. I'll check in with Thad so, that he knows that kind of thing. But it happened at McCormick, at the disc golf course, yeah.
Was it on the weekend?
No, it was in the evening. It was,
okay.
no, it was an early evening time. 7 o'clock, I went out for a walk. I had clippers along, and actually, the ironic thing is I hadn't actually cut anything. I was looking at the Scotch broom, and he asked me if anyway, so there we go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry.
The city staff is going to consider that and talk about it, and hopefully they will get back to you.
Yeah. All right.
So how it's going to be handled. I've also always thought we should have baseball caps. Questions, like the hat. I love the hat idea.
But I get to school, when you go to volunteer to school, all you gotta wear is a sticker. No name on it, just says volunteer.
Right. But like Sue said, pretty soon. But most people aren't gonna be out cutting Scotch broom or ivy unless they're a volunteer. But anyway, usually. Anyone else from the floor want to talk? Okay. You ready, Lynn? Go for it.
Okay, so I'm really happy to present this today. It's a preliminary concept of a proposal for Dotton Lake. And I've been working with staff and the fine details of this on where signs will be actually
So Lynn, you put those flags there? Yes. Okay. Okay, okay, thanks.
So as you can see, the city owns, if you're looking at the map there, it's pretty self-explanatory where the Dalton Lake and ODOT property actually is, but we are managing. And again, this concept is by the co-op agreement. Any questions, Alon?
What's the building right there?
That's a city-owned water treatment plant.
Yeah, that's our water filtration facility.
Excuse me, would it be possible for you to use a microphone so possibly we could hear you a bit better?
Right here?
That part of one? Thank you very much. Yeah, I could bring it back to you. You can probably take it that way. Thank you. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions so far? Much better, isn't it? Okay, next page. The kiosk design for Dalton Lake Nature Preserve. So I actually really like the Nob Hill Nature Park kiosk, and it also has two sides to it. And this design was made in particular for Nob Hill, and I believe it was made by Public Works, the carpenter there. And I also chose it for continuity, so for the parks. And again, I said that there is double-sided posting on there, and it's visible on the bike path and the walking path. Next, at number 4 is procure materials and install signage. And again, this is subject to ODOT approval with city staff. The first one would be a wooden tree and plant identifier signs, and that's about 15 of those. And they're going to be a simple sign. Actually, the picture is the next page. So again, it's very passive wooden signs, directional signs. For some of the species, we're going to use a simple wood sign for those, saying this basically is saying a rose. It's a double gold. Then you have the interpretive signs, which describe what a pollinator is. But those signs, I'm imagining a historical sign that goes along with that, because in that area on the north end, they built ships in World War I. And I think it would be nice to put a little bit of history there, especially for kids when they're coming through there and learning. And again, about 6 acrylic interpretive markers, wooden trail directional signs. The number is to be determined yet. A treated wood post with the doggy waste bags and holder. So on here, I'm doing this for the people in the audience here, is I have been working with city staff on signage per the Cooperative Management Agreement, number 24562. It was signed in April of 2009. The terms of agreement, number 8, is the city obligations and subject to ODOT approval, and this is all for the signage. So on your cooperative agreement that I've passed out, you'll see that it tries to go by that plan. Next page gives you those pictures. The interpretive signs are acrylic, so they're going to last a long time, and they can either be put on a wood post or a metal one. So number 5, procure metal signs for the kiosk, such as no camping, no fires, dogs must be on leash, and the hours dawn to dusk. Instead of garbage cans right now, we're going to try pack it in and pack it out signs.
If that doesn't work, then we go to Plan B. So, and that would be actually under the guidelines on number 8, I believe, or 10. Number 6 is to add a concrete bench to a viewing area, and there's been a private donation for that. 7, develop a Facebook page for Friends of Dalton Lake Nature Preserve under the guidelines of the City of St. Helens Friends of the Park programs. Work with Solve and other interested groups on cleanup and other projects that may come up. Number 8 is schedule Saturday walks in the preserve with children from local schools and the recreation center as an educational activity. And this is something that Patrick Berkeley will be working on.
And
What's
that's
this?
happening now, right? Isn't that, I feel like I've seen those.
At, oh, great, okay, perfect. For anybody, yeah. So number 9 is a press release, excuse me, by Crystal Farnsworth that would be made on Dalton Lake and the changes. And number 10, I'd like to add Dalton Lake Plan as an agenda item for a Columbia City Council meeting. So that would be a good informational meeting for anybody who would be interested. So they know about the plan and what our intentions are.
So is that technically in Columbia City?
No, it's St. Helens property, where we're going to put the kiosks and everything. But I think it's, I want to be very respectful, not only for the citizens that are living around that area, but also in St. Helens as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
You were saying the park would only be open dawn to dusk?
yeah.
Is somebody gonna manage the homeless that live down there?
That's going to be addressed at City Council to the Police Department, St. Helens Police Department. So I've considered that. Yeah, because also I'd like to know if there's an emergency, who would respond first and who would be responsible. And I think I can assume an answer, but I don't want to do that. So that's going to be addressed.
If they're coming in on 4th Street in Columbia City,
Okay.
I can speak really loud.
It's for minutes.
Name for the record.
Okay, my name is Marilyn Heaton. I live at 340 Spinnaker Way in Columbia City. And my question is, where's the bike, where you're putting the bike racks and the first kiosk off of the north end of 4th Street? What are you thinking about with the traffic that will be coming down 4th Street? If you are familiar with that, it is a very narrow street and there is no room at this time.
It won't be on 4th Street. It's to the, the gate there at the entrance to Dalton Lake on the Columbia River side. That's where it's going to be, on either side of that. Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, they're gonna be accessing that
Name for
bike.
the record, please.
Hank Lane, I live on 4th Street, 2 houses up from where you plan on putting the bike rack. They're gonna be accessing that bike rack from both ends. Wouldn't you agree? From off of 4th and up the path. That's where the concern is. Right now, the 4th Street is not being maintained. And just to drive down there, you've got to work your way around branches and brush and everything else that's overgrown. Adding bicycles to that, I think, is going to be a risk to those bicyclists.
Thank you for your concern, and we will be cleaning up those trails too.
Bicycle path through there already?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bike path already from St. Helens to Columbia City. Yeah, he knows that. So.
Okay, next is future plans upon approval. So future plans, the first one is to acquire access to Dalton Overlook and Beach with easement or acquisition. Number 2 would be ADA trail enhancement. It's the south trailhead going to Dalton Lake Overlook. Number 3, Madrona Court Trail. Need the right of access for the public there as well.
Hey, Liz, Lynn, can I ask you to just slow down, just so that everybody knows what the Dalton Overlook is and the beach? I think maybe look at the map and talk about that.
That's a good idea,
Yeah.
because I know some people haven't been there for a
Yep.
while.
Yeah.
And so, if you go back to the map. Yeah, sure, this works. Okay, so the Madrona Court Trail is the southernmost tip there. You can see the trail is going into a residential area. A lot of people have been using that trail, but we need to have right of access because it is on private property. So that's something that we're looking at for the future.
Great.
And the beach is along the lower east side that overlooks the Columbia River. And there's some trails there already. But again, halfway through that area, it's private property, and we'll have to be talking about access there as well, getting that ease of access. Any questions?
The Overlook?
Oh, the Overlook, thank you. Okay, the Overlook is the first trail that you come to, coming from St. Helens, where you're parking at the Public Works and Road Department, and you walk down the bike trail, and then you take a right, the first trail that you come to, into the woods, and that trail leads you to an overlook, and it overlooks the Dalton Lake, and it's beautiful there. And there's old growth cedars, and actually I walked through with Lona Pierce, who is our naturalist, and she has a list, actually, of a study that was done about 6 years ago on Dalton Lake, and there's so many species there that you can't find anywhere else. They're unique to that area, and I've got a list of them. I'm not going to read them to you, but it's pretty important to make sure that we identify those, and we're not clipping them back or, maintaining them really well just by leaving them alone. Any questions? No? Okay. So number 4 is wood viewing platforms, a boardwalk, and benches on the Lower East Trail. Now, I'm not talking about covering the whole trail with a boardwalk, but there are some areas in the winter where it gets a little damp or wet or sometimes covered all the way over. So some of that would be in specific places that I don't know about right now. So I'd like to put some bird blinds in there. And we had one of our advisory committee members that said we could also build swallow and bat houses to help with mosquito control. Now, this I put under, and this is what you were asking about, Jerry, number 7. If the pack it in, pack it out signs aren't working, then under the city obligation, number 10, we'd put trash containers at the north entry and initiate regular pickup for the city. Number 8 is assess, and clean up the trail from Belton Road as a connection from Columbia Botanical Garden. Now, that's really overgrown, and it might be a little steep there, but I did find the trail. So, let's see here. Yes, right down from the, yes,
And
it
that's all
is.
ODOT
Right
owned.
here. It's ODOT owned, yes.
Yeah.
There's a little sliver there
Yeah.
that you can cross the street, and I did find the trail, but it hasn't been used.
Yes. You would
Oh,
not be
you-
trespassing on
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty steep. Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to number 6 because when I said build, swallow, and bat houses to help with mosquito control, I was thinking to involve some of the kids in the area at the high school at the wood shop. They might want to take that on too and build those houses. So number 9, when we get access to the Dalton Overlook, I'd like to put a split rail fence at Overlook as a safety feature with a danger sign, because I think it's something that would need to be done there. It comes on people pretty fast if they're not aware of that overlook and how steep that is. And number 10 is add 3 to 4 designated parking spaces near the St. Helens Water Treatment Facility, the north entrance. And that would be right across from, when I was looking at it, it's possible, but we could do that across from the water treatment plant. It's on the St. Helens, yeah, property past the 4th entrance. And at the end, I just want to thank you for your time and consideration of this project.
So can we comment now? This is good. I like all the thought that you put into it.
Before you go on, why don't you just talk about, are you gonna talk about this?
She referenced the piece.
Yeah,
Why don't you talk about that before we, I'm not sure we're supposed to have comments from the audience in this particular one, but we're very open here. And so, but let's let Lynn finish her part before we move forward with questions.
okay, so again, this, in 2009, ODOT had this land as, it's a mitigation area, and it's about 56 acres. And they came to an agreement with the city of St. Helens as a cooperative management agreement. And so there's stipulations in there of what St. Helens would do and how they would maintain that. And so I passed this around so that you could see more references. And reading it, it's all about passive improvements. You know, if we make any improvements at all. And in my presentation, I referenced number 8 and 10 on page 3. And I believe by going by this cooperative agreement that, and staying within the bounds of this, we'll have probably the best likelihood of having it approved by ODOT too. Any other questions, or?
I think it sounds like a great addition for St. Helens and Columbia City to have kind of a really beautiful natural area. I don't know if Columbia City really has very many areas that are kind of managed, or parks managed as natural areas, so this could be a great addition, I would think, to Columbia City to have a beautiful nature area.
Well, and that's why I call it a preserve, because I'm trying to preserve the whole area, the flora and the fauna that are in there now, and should be. So keep it as natural as we can.
I worked for local government for 32 years. I'm getting there. I'm retired now. Hi, I'm Janet Oatney. A couple of questions. First of all, I commend you guys for taking on this project. It's a very underutilized location, and I think it's a great idea to turn it into some sort of a nature preserve. A couple of points of interest that I have with my background and my history that I've done here. Also, my in-laws live there. I have a house there. Is that there's a lot of talk about the plants and stuff, but it's really important. There's some very unique bird species there as well. And my father-in-law here, he's a big birder, and he has a huge list of all the birds that are there. So I think it's important to recognize the importance of that area for the bird populations as well as for the plant populations, and also with the terrestrial animals too.
going back to something that there's somebody who came and talked earlier about something, there's a lot of invasives in there, so I'm hoping that you guys have included some sort of invasive species control plan in there, whether it's biological or cultural or whatever type of control method is suitable for that site, because it's pretty bad. I'm kind of the ivy warrior back there too. I'm snipping ivy when I go back through there. One of the things that that area does provide for the community is also flood storage. And I'm glad to hear that you're doing a passive approach there, but I still want to make sure that whoever comes up with the final plans for trails pays attention to natural drainage patterns and to the ability of flood storage. And that Dalton Lake is pretty much silted in. There's very little flood storage there, so it's not providing the functions, which is interesting when you talk about the ODOT agreement, because if it's a mitigation site, it had to mimic and restore or mitigate for lost functions and values, which I'm sure flood storage was, so I'm not really sure that all of this is keeping in with the mitigation requirements of this site, because there's usually some legal binding mitigation that's put upon ODOT for what they're doing there. So I want to make sure that you kind of keep that in mind about opportunities, just like somebody else was talking about, well, in 20 years, we may not be able to have a park because we sold the land. So much of what happens in local government is lost opportunities. And if there's some opportunities to create more flood storage with the type of flooding that we're having there, I think you should look to that. And there are passive ways to do that as well. So the birds, Migratory Bird Treaty Act. I think for my in-laws, again, the birds, a little concerned about that easement that runs, the part of the ODOT property that runs right behind the property. What's your development's name there? River Club Estates. That you don't create an attractive nuisance over to where the private beaches are, as far as, you know, pulling people from the city side over to the private side, because it's, the path just ends right there, you know? Right, but I'm thinking when you're designing your access points and your signage, you know, right now there's a sign that says this is a private beach, you know, that kind of stuff, so pay attention to that with the. Not really. No, it's not. There's a path. Yeah. Yeah, there's a path. It's a pretty well-worn path. From the woods to the beach. If you look at the most northern part of there, that little kind of triangle, you see the houses, the developments, right there, yeah, yeah. So yes, people walk right through there, so.
They can walk across, right?
Yeah, yes, we do it all the time, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the trail ends and comes out right there. So again, in keeping with your signage and, you know, making sure that people are respectful, that they need to kind of be respectful of the private citizens that live there. I think that's all. Did I hit everything, Martin?
Everything except what I'm
Okay, good. Everything except for what Martin's going to say. So again, pay attention to the drainage patterns and what the mitigation. I'd be interested in knowing what this was mitigating for.
I know the answer
Okay.
to that, actually.
What?
They were,
Come on, join me.
because not only did I live in Columbia City
Yeah.
then, but it was designed to remove reed canary grass, increase the water level in there for waterfowl. And to remove canary grass, you have to keep it continuously flooded to at least 2 feet, which is why they dammed Harry Creek. And that was the ODOT mitigation plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, no, that
side
was
what's-
the plan.
Okay.
When they widened Highway 30,
That's what I was looking
Yes.
for.
when they widened Highway 30, that was a mitigation.
That was the mitigation site.
The other end of that.
Yeah.
I was there for 27 years. And in my, that's why I was kind of surprised. I used to go down there all the time
Yeah.
before there was even a trail there.
Yeah.
I've been down there, but I haven't been down that far in there. But actually, when they mitigated that, there's less birds that come in there now before they mitigated.
Yeah.
Noticeably less.
Yeah. So that's just was part of the history that I wasn't quite getting. What were they mitigating for? Yeah. Hey, I will turn it over to my father-in-law.
Well, that creek used to come out where Brownlows Beach is.
Yeah.
You know, where it comes out now, way down by where you kind of, where I'm talking about. It used to flow through the upper lake and out
My name's Martin McRoberts. I'm actually from New Mexico, but I have a house in Columbia City. And it backs on the ODOT land. The current priorities, I would add no firearms to your list of items. As far as your presentation to the public, I would go somewhere in addition to Facebook. Some of us don't use Facebook. We need to be able to get a website or something to describe it. I'm pleased to hear the word preserve. I was worried that we were going to go in, bulldoze the thing away, and build houses. So thank you.
If you still have the land, you do.
Martin, did you tell them the number of species of birds that you had counted back
Oh,
there?
I got on eBird, which is a international bird system run by Cornell. And between myself and an individual named Tom Meyer from Warren, we've identified 130 species of bird down there. And that's just when I'm here, and he's a new birder, so he's learning.
Thank you, yeah. Anyone else have a comment?
Do you have a list of those birds?
Of course he has one.
They're, not with me, I don't. I can get you a list of them.
As I did the same, Bill, we've got lists of plants that you can access online, and we've got bird spots there or whatever. That's always really neat
Well, if we have
information to have.
a staff contact, we can email it to him.
Okay, Lynn, do you have anything else you want to say? And what would you like us to do?
I'd like you to prune this concept that I have developed or that we have developed as a committee. And so that we can move forward with those plans. And then I plan, as far as funding, I've already researched that as well. I plan on writing a couple of grants and trying to keep the cost down to a minimum right now, but I'd like to submit a budget, a real solid budget for this in the report for next year. So, but yeah, I would like it to help us.
So, I want to make a suggestion here. So, when we communicate here, it's all right with you, Lynn, you can come up with a different name, but you have it on the front here, it's called the Dalton Lake Project. So, anytime we use the word Dalton Lake Project, we're talking about this. And that way we all are on the same page.
But
I mean, really, some people start calling it one thing, someone calls it something else.
well, I couldn't call it what I want to call it, nature preserve, and that would be the Dalton Lake Nature Preserve. So right now,
You want
that's
to call it the
the
Dalton Lake Nature Preserve Project?
Yes,
It's your call.
you could do that.
No,
too.
it's your call, as far as I'm concerned.
Do we need a motion to have this presented to city council for approval? You can't just.
Yeah, but I'd like for Lynn to say what she wants it to be called, so we're all on the same page all the time.
You say preserve, you don't freak people out.
If you're gonna change the name, now's the time.
Call it preserve.
I'd like it to be called what it's gonna be, Dalton Lake Nature Preserve.
let's move forward here. I guess this is you, Matt. Waiving fees for nonprofit sports leagues.
We're going to actually talk about the Friends of program first. That's on the listed first. No problem. It should be a quick conversation. Yeah. You have a final version included in your packet.
Just a second. Hey, guys, if you're gonna have a conversation, I'd ask you to hold it outside and for us to kind of hold it down real quick here also.
So you have a final version in your packet, which includes all the latest edits from myself and Jenny and Sue and anybody else who has looked at this document. So if you guys are okay with this final version, we'd like to go ahead and send it to the City Council for approval with your recommendation. The only thing that needs to be changed is on the front page, and that is at the very bottom of who should be contacted when they want to form a group. I'm going to assume, and I'll probably guess from Councilor Morton, that whoever the contact person is to start these groups will be discussed at a City Council and City Administrator level. And then I would assume somebody on staff would be selected to look this over. And this is a separate handout that looks like, yeah. Well, it would eventually come to you guys if somebody wanted to, but there needs to be somebody on staff as well to.
So Matt, what's your opinion on having some kind of identification? Or is that something you guys want to think about?
I think that's more of a discussion for Sue in the Public Works and Parks Department.
Okay, because that would apply to people that are, friends of parks.
Yes, it would.
You know that this all came from you guys. This was your initiative, and it's going forward to the council at this point. But this is your work, and the staff took your work, your comments of what friends were. Remember, we went through that process, and this is what the staff came up with. So that's what you've got in front of you.
Yeah, that's,
It's
I haven't digested it, I'm not,
Do you need a little more time to take this home, review it, and come back next meeting and make the recommendation? Okay.
we have been looking at this the last 3-4 months, so.
but I mean, not the whole package,
Was it included in the packet? Okay.
Just got one clarification, just bring up this number 10, group leaders ensure all volunteers complete release form for every participant submitted to the city.
Yep.
Verbally prior to the first work party, but hopefully still, we never know who's coming, so sometimes we don't get those signed until the day of the event.
Yep.
So hopefully
That's still appropriate. And I was going to mention this at the next topic as well, but the waiver forms, the volunteer forms, I have been working with Kathy and our city attorneys, and we do have that ready for approval for the city council to review and approve. They will be 1-year volunteer forms, so every January or July, once a year or something, you will, anybody who volunteers will be asked to re-sign a volunteer waiver form. But it would be good for an entire year. So you don't have to sign one at every single event.
I do have a question on number 3 there, where it says, work parties and projects must be approved by the Parks Commission and city, at least 3, and city of 6, not just one or the other, 3 weeks in advance.
Correct. So we don't want just some random person going in and, oh, I'm a Friends of McCormick Park and start cutting down branches and stuff. They need to come to you and THAD, which would be the city or staff, for both approval to say, yes, you can do this. And do you have a volunteer form and all the hoops?
Patrick, and myself, I did a little work on the clip there.
Mm-hmm.
I filled out, waiver. I talked to Pat, Killer Guys,
Mhm.
But I just don't think that 3 weeks is, sometimes that might not work.
But if you're doing it in a way of, I really want to work in performance parks and work on pulling these things. I'm going to be working on it for the next, like, 6 months or something. Is it okay if I go in and pull this stuff? Would that be okay?
So if you guys want to be part of that approval process, you only meet once a month. So
But if you're gonna have a big work party, you pretty much have a big party planned in advance, like, hey, December 10th, we're gonna go visit this park. It's one time to prove you have to do it every single time, right? I mean, if you have a big.
if you have a big project like what she was saying, you're going to be working over the next 6 months or something. Yeah, you're not. I would assume you're not going to have to come every time you want to work. But if you're doing something different, let's say you're pulling weeds one day and then next day you're cutting down trees. Obviously, that's something different. And yeah,
So what I should do is go down and sign a waiver. Because I felt bad before I even did this. I said, well, we're going to the library where they, you're saying radiator, blah, blah, blah. And it's sure, okay, he knows about it then, because then he knows he's gonna have tiles to pick out too. So that waiver would take care of that.
You'd still need to check in with that or the parks. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
so, and I believe, and Councilor Morton can chime in on this as well, but the idea and vision of this is that each one of you or some of you may be in charge of or oversee some Friends of Walnut Tree Park or something like this. So if there are instances where you want to do something this weekend or something, maybe we can change that to say at least you talk to Thad or Sue or whoever the public works director or park supervisor is.
November, like next month, we don't have a meeting.
Correct.
So our next meeting is not until the second Monday in December. I mean, I don't disagree now.
Yeah.
People getting it out ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I think where it says, you know, the
So for,
and the city, it says and.
okay,
I wouldn't mind it saying or,
okay.
because that way Sue or Cat or someone could make that decision if it wanted to happen sooner.
Howard, when do you have the next one?
November the 2nd, I was gonna bring up a few different group
That's what I'm saying, we already know now, November 2nd, how long have you known you have that date?
Oh, it's always the first Saturday in November and the first Saturday in
It
April.
seems like big work parties, we know the date.
The problem, my problem with it though is like last Sunday I was thinking, it's gonna be ready. God, I blow the leaves off the trail. So I grab my leaf blower and walk through the park. There's a couple of tree branches that are hanging down low that I'm probably gonna go in there and cut back. Is that still cool, or do I have to call up and ask permission? Oh, there's a branch that's getting low. Do I have to call somebody to cut a branch?
You know, when it gets ridiculous and when it gets to a point where volunteers are hassled by filling out forms and asking permission and doing those kinds of things that that are roadblocks for volunteers, it doesn't make sense. And I know the council has talked about this before. So somehow we've got to figure a way that's user-friendly for volunteers and still protects the city from lawsuits and injuries and that kind of thing. So, you know, again, we take this back to the staff and say, hey, there might be a little glitch here. You can clean this up a bit. You know, think of a really good system that can work and function that way effectively, and invite volunteers to work so that they don't have to that they don't have to go through so many hurdles to help the city out. Okay, so I
think we kind of have a management plan that our track record speaks. We're not gonna do something radically crazy in the park without really mentioning it to somebody.
Right.
But there's some day-to-day things that just
And I like the idea of the auspices of the Friends of, is if we come up with a hat that says Friends of the Parks, it doesn't necessarily need to be the bicycle park or the Columbia View Park or Dalton Lake Nature Preserve, but if you have a Friends of hat, maybe that's part of your ID. Maybe that's part of who you are, and I think that can help a lot in terms of identifying people who are actually doing work. And maybe if Pat had one on at that time with a hat that said, Friends of, maybe this wouldn't have happened to Patrick. And I was really saddened by that report because those things should not happen. They really shouldn't.
Before John makes his motion, well, amend that motion. I mean, what do you want to do on number 3?
I guess I recommend that we approve this and send it on to staff for draft.
Number 3, work parties and projects must be
They can approve number 3 if you approve it, I don't want to approve it.
Matt, is that okay?
Yeah, would it be appropriate just to say maybe city in advance and just take out at least 3 weeks? That way they're at least calling you or Thad or someone to. Okay. Can I go ahead and
Parks Commission or city?
Can I go ahead and make the suggestion just to replace "and" with "or," and then take out the words "at least 3 weeks"? So that way it says you are contacting at least the Parks Commission or the city in advance. Okay.
All those in favor?
Okay, I will make those changes, and that will go to the city council.
Sorry.
Just follow-up question on this. For groups that already exist, is there gonna be a list on the website or somewhere of the formal groups so that people aren't
Yes.
requesting to do a group?
Yeah, there will be. This information will be put on the website as well as the groups that already exist. I know in the near future, probably 2020, we're going to be revamping the website quite a bit. So there'll be a lot of updates and changes. So that I may put some initial information on the website just to get it out there, and so it's available. But we'll continue to update those. So you can expect to see some ongoing changes with the website.
Volunteers who go out on the ball fields or volunteers who do that traffic, put work parties on, or are they classified kind of in the same?
You could put them in the same group. You could also keep them separate if they don't want to do anything else. I mean, yeah. Yeah. I think just in the way of this, it's more of a formalization, so to speak, that we have something standard that everybody can follow.
Okay, Matt, you want to talk about non-profits?
Yeah, I'll just update the Parks Commission that the City Council met and talked about this. What was discussed was doing a reduction in fees to keep the schedule the way it is and has been approved. All organizations will be required to pay the new fees. However, if a group wants to do labor on the fields or maintenance or anything to help out the park staff, along with approval and volunteer forms and all that kind of stuff, that they can submit a list of the hours that we'll put down, and they will be offered at most a 50% credit from the fees that they paid originally. Yep. I never heard back. I sent Jeff Kroll an email, and so he wasn't at my door, so I assume it's good news. So they will, yeah, they will have to pay the higher fee for whatever those are and the uses that they may need to reserve. But up to a 50% will be refunded to them. Up to 50%. Up to 50% depending on how many hours they log.
So now we don't need to do anything with that?
You do not need to do anything with that.
It's all right, but I mean, I'm spending a lot of time in Oakville, luckily we don't have any meetings or non-profits, but it's like, they get credit for their voluntary and other people don't.
They pay for the park use where you don't. I guess that would be the argument that I would throw out to you.
But I just provide my own equipment. Okay, number 7, discussion items. Anyone have any discussion on that?
I just want to say that it's awesome how many press releases I've seen come out from the city about common grants the city is on. There have been so many, and it's really exciting. Every time one comes out, I'm like, yes, we got it. So huge thanks to the staff for that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think there was 3 things in the last paper.
Yeah. That's mostly Jenny.
She wrote that stuff in the newspaper, did she? Word is you're leaving.
I didn't know that was a direct question.
Are you done? Nicole, are you leaving us?
We don't talk about this right now.
That's a yes.
Okay, I have some discussion items. And this is kind of aimed towards Sue, I think, and the whole group here. Okay, the urban trail, still kind of working on that. I worked on that cliff trail one day, and I'm gonna go back and work on it a little more. And one time I said, I think there needed to be a rail there. That's not true, it doesn't. Yesterday, my wife and I, she didn't want to go down the trail, but we did. No, I didn't force her. I don't think I can do that. You know, the top 2/3 of the trail is pretty easy to get down. It's kind of steep, but it's easy to get down. It kind of levels out, and it kind of goes through the brush there. And at the last meeting, since I can't make a motion, Matt said that, you know, if we, I personally, you know, and I assume Carmen and everyone that was in our committee, you know, that spent time on the urban trail, we would, at least I know we would like that trail to eventually go down the cliff face there, because I think that's such a beautiful view up at the top there, you know, looking out at the Cook County Courthouse, the marinas and all that kind of stuff. But that bottom part, the bottom probably 40 or 50 yards, that needs to be redone. And last meeting, Matt said that if that was going to have stairs, concrete stairs or railroad ties or whatever, it needs to get in the master plan. If I was kind of, if someone has something to say on that, I mean, if someone can make a motion, if they think that's appropriate for getting the master plan. I think Doug said that, what was you saying, Doug, about getting it in the master plan?
Well, it needs to come up from a recommendation from you folks to ask the council to add things like that to the master plan so that there's a list of issues that when we revisit the master plan that is put on.
So I'm gonna keep harping on this urban trail.
Okay.
Are we better off?
No, I'd like for a motion to be, I mean, I can't make a motion, but let me ask.
Sue might want to clarify
Yeah.
what I said.
Yeah, so, and the other thing is next year, we're looking at redoing, looking at doing mini master plans for each one of the parks. And then once we have all of those vetted through this commission, totally redoing the entire Parks and Trails master plan. So things like that, that would be the best time to add that, because it's difficult to go through a process to just add one itty bitty tiny project to the master plan, and amend that whole document.
So when's that gonna be discussed?
Well, that's one of the things that we're wanting to do in 2020 is that whole process.
Who's gonna do that? Is the staff gonna sit down and do that?
We would have just like we had the master plans for Godfrey Park, Campbell Park, the Millard Road property, we would have a consultant look at those properties and look at the needs in those specific locations and develop those master plans for each individual park property. And then, go through this commission, find out what your recommendations are, look at those, and then put everything together and update the whole Parks Master Plan.
The thing that I've been concerned about is, for me, that's kind of a high priority. Plus some other things, but that's probably it. And I don't see that the city, we are the Parks and Trails Commission. We don't really have a urban trail. We have bits and pieces that are in the plan that Jim wrote up and can be connected together. But Sue, I know that you probably won't agree with me on this, but I just get the feeling, and I've talked to Rick, the mayor, I've talked to Doug, and they're kind of behind, having an urban trail. But I just, we went through 3 or 4 months of making a plan, and I'll talk about that. That's my third thing I want to talk about. But I just, I just don't see the city staff, moving in that direction very quickly. And I know the wheels of government move slow. I have no problem, but I can just see that, you look at all the different parks, and I can see that the urban trail is not even being put towards a.
Well, I would think that would be an important part of the Parks and Trails Master Plan, especially an update. And we have been trying to advance our trails program, and with urban trails as well. That was certainly something that was taken into consideration when they just updated. Well, it's not an update. It's a brand new, the corridor master plan, the riverfront connector plan, having trails for pedestrians and bicycles, and all of that was incorporated into those. We also, as was just mentioned, the grant that we just got for the 5th Street Trail project. So that's, again, advancing part of our inner urban trails master plan. That was something that's already in the master plan. So I think we are implementing what we can, but, as you all know, our parks dollars are very small and precious. Yeah. So having those be priorities over something else where we see so many needs right now, it's difficult to put those up on to a priority where we can actually act on them. But right. But again, because it's not right now, it's not in the master plan. But once it is in the master plan, and I don't see any issue in incorporating that into a master plan's update. But I think we need to go through that whole process. Otherwise, it just becomes so piecemeal that we don't. Yeah.
I guess I can understand that, but I know Paul feels that way, but I don't see why we can't say, we want, we'd like the stairs to be cut in, because, and not only for the total master plan, it's just like I was giving an example yesterday, we went down the trail, the bottom part there is a little difficult, I'd say my wife had, a little issue with that, and I was very careful since I was taking the 2 dogs down it. But I think just for general usage, that's something that should, I'd like, I think it has a high enough priority that it should be done relatively soon because people use that. The day I was there working on the trail, I probably had 4 or 5 different groups go by me. Maybe it's a total of 10 people in about 4 hours or so. I don't know if that's normal or not. But I would like to see the steps have a higher priority than being pushed back to, where we have a consultant look at them. So, if I wasn't, okay, that's my feeling. I'd like to see it have a higher priority and be put in.
I mean, I disagree with you, but we need to put it on the agenda and bring it up next meeting or the meeting after that. And submit it that way. Just before you came here, we had just submitted about 2 days injured. We had a whole master plan on the parks. It was several years ago now, but it was that long. 4 or 5? Yeah, they were long.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't had one Those days are gone.
Mr. Morton?
And I've got an idea, and it's one of the things that we brought to city council is that we need a master plan parking lot on your agenda sheet, right down at the bottom of all the things that have been discussed that you want to bring forward to our master plan, so we don't forget them when it comes time to do that. So I would like to see just a little sentence down there about urban trails, as a master plan issue. And I think that could be put down at the bottom, a parking lot on the bottom of your agenda somewhere of, got it. So some things like that, so that when you go away, Mr. Belcher, for, yeah, a lot of people be happy. We'll get out of here on time, right? And whoever else steps up can see those things, and the new Parks Commission can see those issues that have been talked about, because they get forgotten if they aren't in writing somewhere and we're reminded of them. So that's my suggestion.
Okay, the third thing I want to talk about was the first off-street trail coming to St. Helens, thanks to Grant. And Sue and Jen talked about this a couple months ago, I think. I have no problem with the urban trail that we designed being modified and changed. Absolutely none. I think this is a vast improvement. But the thing I'm concerned about, the thing that concerns me, is this goes for about 1,000 feet and it ends on 12th Street, Now, granted, you can make a sharp right and go up down that little trail, up the steps, and connect into the trail that we have. And I would like to see this, Jen, I was hoping that she'd stay here. Maybe I should come in and talk to her, but I know that you guys talk and you guys are going to do what you want to do anyway. But I'm pretty negative on that. So that trail could go, continue up that way and connect into what we designed. The thing I'm concerned about, if we wait, was like, I think Sue was mentioning, that the trail continues from 5th Street continues all the way from 12th Street, all the way over to Columbia Boulevard. And I haven't walked all that, but I got the impression, I got the impression that some of them are right behind people's houses. And I got the impression that there's someplace along there there's a real steep drop-off that's real dangerous. So the grant that, Jen and the city, got from Nike is going to do that 1,000 feet, up to 12th Street. But, it could be years or maybe never before, the trail. And so what I would like to do is see, the new part of the trail being, that part of 3rd Street that goes by your house, and have the efficient trail go this way, and then maybe connect. And I'd like to see the staff come up with a plan to do that. And then eventually, if and when 5th Street, the rest of 5th Street Trail gets developed, that, the trail can be modified and changed at that time. Because I think if we wait for the second half of that trail to be done, I don't think, we could be sitting around here, forever. So those are the three things I talked about. One is there doesn't need to be a rail there. I'd like to see the steps in the master plan. I can see that I'm kind of a minority on that. And I'd like to see the new part of the trail be incorporated in the original plan that we had.
I know what Jen's going to say, and Jen will say, because we have this initial grant, phase 2 for another grant will be very easy. It sets a platform.
The point I'm making, Doug, yes, I totally agree with that statement. And if it happens like next year or the year after, sure, let's do that. But likewise, Jen could be leaving here to get another job. We may never get a grant to finish that. So why not go ahead? My point is, go ahead with the urban trail. Since we are the Trails Commission, let's have a trail. Let's get started. That doesn't mean that it can't be modified
we can't change the grant.
And Sue, I think if we went from 12th Street to 20th Boulevard, I think that's the best way to go. It's just that, I think that's the best way to go, but in my opinion, that might be way out in the future. That's my opinion.
So, oh, go ahead.
I was just, there's a couple challenges with that. It's totally doable, but, yeah, it probably wouldn't happen in the next 18 months, so.
So my understanding is that once you get a grant, that the people that you get a grant from will be here to inspect what you've done, and if you don't stay with their program, you're kind of out the door for any more grants without a doubt. So there is that kind of problem, and I think Jen will tell you that. And I don't want to be the devil's advocate on this, because I think Jerry is right on, and it's a good idea to be flexible, but man, we don't want to stray from the grant money that we do have and what the project is described. I'm sure that Jen will say that we have to pretty much go, stay with that. And so I do agree with what you're saying is come back, look at it, and get with Jen right away for phase 2 so that she's on board for Nike again, so that we can do an addition to that.
What's the deal with Godfrey Park? Is that area going to be developed?
Yeah, it is. So we need to get a boundary survey so we can figure out where the limits of our improvements are going to be. Of course, over the summer everybody was busy, but now that it's fall and we're kind of getting away from that really, really hectic time period, then we just met about it last week about getting in there. So the Parks Department's been stockpiling material to be able to use for the natural playground portion of it, and then Thad's working on ordering some of the other items. But the main thing, the slide, before he can order anything, we need to know where that property boundary is, so he knows how long and exactly where we would be able to place it. So we need to get a surveyor in there. Oh, it's totally going to happen. Yeah, it's been on everybody's schedule all summer.
Okay, is there anything anyone wants to say? I know what you want to say. My turn?
Let's see, maybe I have a phone from yesterday, because we have a party on Mountain Park on the 2nd of November. I also want to say that during that work party, we're going to be
Hey, John, will you tell Jacob that there's no meeting in November?
Okay.
Next was December.
But I just want to kind of give you a summary of what we're planning to do. We're going to be doing a little bit of trail maintenance. I did get some bigger rock in the springtime to put a top of the staircase, the railroad tie staircase. And we're going to dig some of the smaller rock out, put bigger rock in, so hopefully it'll have better drainage for the winter time with a thin layer of the smaller gravel over the top. Just that. We're going to also be doing more lining. We'll probably have 120 or 130
Howie, can you give your report to City Council on your 5-minute at the first part of the work session, and then I won't botch it up. All right. Okay.
The second from 1 until 4. Anyone else have anything they want to say? Really quiet. Okay, so just a reminder, you heard that. Remind everyone there is no meeting in November. So our next meeting will be the second Monday. Meeting in November.
Wow. Great meeting, you guys. So there's less pressure.